Hello, everyone, and welcome to M2M Coverage. We haven't been with you in a while, primarily due to the fact that we're all college students and we've been busy, but also we're working on some stuff behind the scenes. As you saw in our 1 year anniversary update video, we're working to make M2M a club at Brown University, and we're also working on some other things, expanding our series lines. The Fantasy Morons will be coming soon with these two morons over here. Um, but right now, we just wanted to get back to producing some content for you all. The NFL draft is looming, it's getting closer, and there's hype building up around all these different prospects. And it's so hard to evaluate talent being from the perspective of an NFL organization. And I've just been thinking about some of the biggest mistakes that have been made in previous years in terms of evaluating talent. Some names that come to mind are Mitchell Trubisky was taken over Patrick Mahomes in that draft, and the Bears look at their quarterback situation now. That could be a pivotal decision for a franchise. And this year's draft is no different. There's a lot of quarterbacks that after Trevor Lawrence, there's a lot of quarterbacks where they're toss-ups. You don't know whether they'll be Justin Herberts or whether they'll be Tua Tagovailoas. And so there's just a lot of different ways you could go and think about how you evaluate talent in a draft. And so Geoffrey, I wanted to start off with you. What is the biggest mistake that a team can make in this first round of this year's 2021 NFL draft?
Yeah, so there are a lot of rumors about how Joe Burrow wants the Bengals to pick Jamar Chase, and I think this could be a huge mistake if the Bengals actually listen to him. I love Jamar Chase, and I think Burrow and Jamar Chase can be a deadly duo. They can torch the NFL, but that's such a huge risk because there's a great offensive lineman in Sewell, and I think the Bengals' number one priority right now should be to protect Joe Burrow. You saw what happened last year. Their offensive line was complete garbage, and Joe Burrow towards ACL, towards MCL, that's a major injury. If something like that happens again, then there's a good chance that Joe Burrow isn't the same quarterback. Joe Burrow has the potential to be one of the greatest, to be a great quarterback, to be a top five quarterback in the NFL, and I don't want to see him get hurt again. I think that they should prioritize their offensive linemen and they should pick Sewell. And I think it's a huge mistake to pick Chase over him.
I wouldn't say it's a huge mistake to do that. I won't disagree that they need protection for Joe Burrow. That's their number one priority. But also satisfying a quarterback and his desires is also something that the organization should consider. Look at Seattle right now and why their situation is so bad. They don't listen to Russ. So getting Jamar Chase. First of all, Jamar Chase offers something to the Bengals that would never ever be offered in any future draft ever again. And that is already pre-made chemistry with Joe Burrow and that friendship that they've built for this past 2 years. And next, this offensive line class is deep. They can still get offensive line in other rounds of the draft. They can solve it in free agency. They can get 1 to 2 year rentals from the veterans on the market right now. And they can get 1 or 2 year rentals, get Jamar Chase, and then solve the offensive line even more next year's draft or this year's second round, third round. Remember, the Bengals have a high second round pick. That can also still be used on an offensive lineman. But I do think if I were the Bengals, I would also draft Sewell. But I do not think that Jamar Chase would be a mistake.
Yeah, it comes down to that question of like, how much do you value team needs versus just a confirmed superstar? Like Jamar Chase is definitely going to be at least at least what we saw something similar to Justin Jefferson last year. You know that Jamar Chase is going to be a number one type wide receiver unless he's a complete bust. But then you got to look at team needs, right? Team needs versus just superstardom. That's a very interesting question to ask. And yeah, Geoffrey, if you want to respond to what Kevin said.
It's just a quick response. I don't think the Bengals are in a position to listen to Joe Burrow right now. Their team is not good. Seahawks, they have a good team. They have a playoff team. They should listen to Russell Wilson. But as of now, Bengals are just not a good team. And they should prioritize fixing their team first, and then they can listen to Burrow. And second of all, Bengals already have good wide receivers. They have T. Higgins. They have Tyler Boyd. They don't need another wide receiver. Another wide receiver would just be a luxury for now. And I think Sewell is a necessity for the Bengals, and I think that is the right pick for them.
I don't disagree the necessity versus luxury argument, but again, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, those are only two receivers. And also, it took a while for T. Higgins to kind of blossom last year. All right. So adding another weapon is not bad for the offense. And also, it's not like Sewell like just do or die here. You can still solve the offensive line in other rounds. It's not just if you don't get Sewell, you're going to be screwed for the rest of your franchise. My biggest mistake that a team can make is if the Atlanta Falcons were to draft Matt Ryan's successor in the first round. Let me tell you why. The Falcons lost 12 games last year. They were 4-12. 8 of those 12 losses were one possession games that they could have easily won. And let me remind our audience, one of the losses was to the Cowboys in a terrible blown fashion, typical Falcons fashion. Another loss was they let the Lions drive all the way down with T.J. Hawkinson in the last minute. Another loss, it was a Younghoe Koo missed field goal against the Chiefs, which Younghoe Koo was historic last year, and he somehow missed an easy kick against the Chiefs. And there's just many scenarios where the Falcons just easily give up games that they could have won. But what that shows you is still this Falcons team has the talent to stay in it in almost every game they play. Matt Ryan is still in his 30s. You got Julio Jones, you got Calvin Ridley. You have a potent offense. You need to fix your defense. But if you get your successor right now, you're just giving up the final few years that Matt Ryan's still going to be good. Let me remind our audience, Matt Ryan still has thrown for 4,000 yards in consecutive seasons. And Julio Jones, besides last year because of his injury, he's coming off of 6 consecutive seasons of 1,000-yard seasons. Calvin Ridley has exploded into an amazing wide receiver. If the Falcons really want to compete right now and compete for the Super Bowl, they're still a few years removed from a Super Bowl appearance. They need to add to the defense or get Kyle Pitts and make this offense even scarier.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I think Kyle Pitts would be a great pickup. He's one of the best tight ends in the draft. But I wouldn't blame the Falcons if they take quarterback because I just don't see them winning a Super Bowl as of now. But I can see them picking up a quarterback, having him sit under Matt Ryan for a few years, and then, Ridley's going to be an elite wide receiver in the next few years, and they can fix all their problems in the second, third, maybe even in later years. And I can see them being a great team by going that route.
Well, I want to point to the Packers here. So the Packers were maybe one or two pieces away from really being that Super Bowl team. They've been an NFC Championship team for the past few years. But I mean, I would draw a parallel here. Even though the Falcons aren't as close to the Packers to the Super Bowl, right? You have a veteran quarterback in both teams with a good offense, and you just need that few extra pieces to really elevate your team, right? So I don't want another Jordan Love situation with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, if he gets a successor, I don't know if he wants to stay in Atlanta. He wants to win a Super Bowl at least before he retires. I mean, that's a given. And you need to really help your franchise quarterback who's done so much for your franchise really try to win now. I mean, similar to what the Saints have done with Drew Brees, albeit they did have Jameis Winston on the roster and Teddy Bridgewater. You got to do what you can to win now when your team still has your offensive stars, your certified stars before they become bust because of age.
I think that's kind of a faulty analogy just because the Falcons are a much worse team than the Packers. And Aaron Rodgers, I mean, Matt Ryan is not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers had an MVP season last year. I don't think Matt Ryan's going to do that again. And, I can see maybe they're a playoff team next year. They're a playoff team in the next 3 years. But I just don't see them winning a Super Bowl. And that should be the ultimate goal of every team, to win a Super Bowl. And
right. And their ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl. Why get a successor?
Because they're not going to win a Super Bowl as of now. They have a better chance of winning a Super Bowl in the future. So rebuild now, get a quarterback. They won't have a top 4. They might not have a top 4 pick in the next 3 or 4 years. And they get a quarterback, they rebuild. They can potentially be a Super Bowl team in the next 5 years.
See, I would agree with drafting a successor and rebuilding had they traded Julio Jones, had they traded their aging stars. But the fact that they're keeping them, which means they're not going to trade them when they can still get the maximized return, that means that they're trying to win now. At least that's what they're signaling to me. And if they're trying to win now, they got to add Kyle Pitts or some defensive stars.
I agree. If they're not going to trade Julio Jones because they want to win now, I think that's a huge mistake. I think if they're going to draft a quarterback, then they have to trade Julio Jones. They have to trade Matt Ryan maybe in 2 or 3 years. But yeah, I agree with Kevin on that.
Yeah, complete rebuild versus sticking with what you have, I think is a very important question when it comes to drafting. The quarterbacks in the draft are wild cards, but you know what you're going to get from Matt Ryan. You know that he's going to be productive, he's going to get the ball to his receivers. We saw that in the Falcons offense. It's just a matter of management in whether they can win games or not. Okay, I think I'm going to move on to my biggest mistake that a team could make, and I think it would be the alternative, adding on to what the Kevin said about the Falcons. I think the Falcons not drafting Kyle Pitts would be one of the biggest mistakes that a team could make in this draft. And I think that's just because Kyle Pitts, he's very valuable as a player because he plays the tight end position. He's so versatile. We saw his 40-yard dash. It was like 4.3 or something. He's just very athletic, and we don't see anything like that. People have made Travis Kelce comparisons. People have made so many different comparisons about Kyle Pitts, and his player build is just very unique. I think it's very valuable to have a tight end at that position. There's very limited options available. So if you can get something like that and diversify your offense, have a weapon that could be comparable to Kelce, is what people are saying, you got to go get him. Like, if the Falcons don't draft Kyle Pitts, then what are they doing? Unless, like Kevin said, unless they add a defensive star.
I 100% agree with that take. I think if you just look around the league, there's not many tight end studs anymore. We see with George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and Darren Waller, really, and TJ Hawkinson as well. But if you look at when George Kittle's healthy, he just elevates the 49ers offense. He adds something that, really can't be measured with just a wide receiver or your typical running back, right? Tight ends who can block and who shows the ability to pass catch, right? Kyle Pitts is not just a tight end. He's like a wide receiver playing tight end. That's just unbelievable. He's an athletic freak. And if I'm the Falcons, I might explore trading down and still getting Kyle Pitts if possible, because I don't see Kyle Pitts being immediately taken by some of the teams in the top 10. As Joffrey mentioned, it's like a luxury versus necessity conversation. And for the other teams in the top 10, Kyle Pitts would definitely be a luxury, not a necessity.
Yeah, and who knows what else we may see in this draft. Aaron Rodgers suggested the other day that he wouldn't be surprised if the Packers draft another quarterback after that Jordan Love fiasco. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to our channel, the M2M Network, for more sports and entertainment content.